and welcome to When Conspiracy Becomes Reality radio broadcast, brought to you by www.leadingedgeradionetwork.com. This afternoon, I am your host, Lisa Haven, and I have with me a very, very special guest who I've actually had a live interview with and absolutely adore and love all of his research. And he knows all things about the CERN facility. He's a scientific researcher, very vividly into physics. He is the author of multiple books and a dear friend, and that is Mr. Anthony Patch. Are you with me?
I am. Thank you, Lisa. It's great to be back together with you. We had a great time in Colorado.
Oh, we did. I had so much fun. So I definitely want to go back next year when they have that conference again. But it was a blessing to finally get to meet you in person.
Well, same here. I've been following you for years. And you certainly bring out a variety of topics, but you do it in a very studied and intellectual way rather than sensational and hyping things up like so many people on YouTube tend to do.
And as well with you. That's why I love your stuff. Now, I know you're actually going to have a nonfiction book coming out towards the end of this month, Revising Reality, and I am utterly stoked to read it. I can't wait till it's out because I'm more of a nonfiction kind of girl. Fiction, I love to study and research, so I can't wait for that out. Now, if people want to check you out before we get started, because we've got lots to talk about, what is your website?
Yeah, it's my name, anthonypatch.com.
Anthony Patch. And I'll leave a link below for your YouTubers. Now, on the table today, we have lots to talk about, and Anthony is kind of my guy when it comes to CERN. He's got all the great information on that. But we're going to be discussing everything from Mandela effect to the Mandela portal to D waves to technology from fallen angels to keys to the bottomless pit, and or I guess cryptic keys, sort of. And so lots on the table, and I really want to encourage you viewers out there, you YouTubers out there, hang in for this report because it's going to be one heck of a ride. And with that, Anthony, can you tell us kind of a little bit about that key to the bottomless pit? Because I was reading some of this on your website, and it absolutely intrigued me. So what is that, and how is it linked to CERN?
Well, the key to the bottomless pit is linked to CERN as in Revelation 1 because CERN is actually located over what is believed to be the site of the bottomless pit, which in ancient Roman times was a temple to the god Apollo or Apollyon, the destroyer. So the theory goes CERN was purposely located over the bottomless pit, and it requires, according to Revelation 9:1, a key to open it. And the machine itself, the Large Hadron Collider, in conjunction with a quantum computer that we're going to talk about, which is the adiabatic quantum computer from D-Wave. D-Wave is the machine that will crack the code. It's oftentimes, the key is overlooked. It's just assumed as a word, some sort of a figurative analogy of something that the fallen angel is going to provide. The angel that comes from heaven provides the key to open the pit. But nobody that I've been able to locate has really been able to define the key, to tell us what it really is. And that's what I kind of like to cover with you this morning, if I can. So I'm going to stop frequently and let you jump in.
Yeah, I think well, if you first consider, I think it's a crucial point you made there. CERN's purposefully located over a believed location of where the pit is, and if we take, what is it, the statue of Shiva outside their Geneva Center, is that right?
That's right.
Then we've actually got a strong case for that. I think there's a lot of demonic activity. We've seen, the sacrificial ceremonies done on their commercials, done via the tunnel ceremony that happened recently. So I think that's why this holds so much value to it, because I think I 100% agree that that's definitely where we're headed. So tell us about this key and how it works exactly.
Yeah, in short, the key is coded information. It's encrypted information that needs to be decoded. And you need a machine, you need a quantum computer that can break down that code. If you look at cryptography, if you look at coding systems, RSA coding systems, and the fact that they use thousands of bits to create a code that is required both to write a message and then to decode the message. So what we're talking about specifically, and because we only have an hour today, I'm going to be very short, but on my Urgent Discoveries tab on my website, I break all this down in detail. But basically, it's a key that is composed of bits. And these bits have a direct correlation to qubits that are used by D-Wave's computers. The number of qubits that are in the computer correspond to the number of bits that are in this code that must be broken. It is the combination of the computer, the quantum computer, and I'm going to give you a new model number for them that's not public information. Combined, it's linked to the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, and the two machines together will unlock, they'll turn that key, but they have to decode the information that is provided by the angel that falls from heaven. And I'll stop there.
So you're saying is it a D-Wave quantum computer that is linked to the CERN facility? Did I understand that right? Like are they near each other, or?
They are linked. They're networked. They're computer networked.
Computer networked. Okay, so this network system is going on. Now, here's the thing. We know, or you personally believe, CERN is obviously or could be a portal to another dimension. In this case, we, as Christians, I mean, that's obviously your demonic realm that the book of Revelation speaks about. And I think God allows these things to happen in its time, because we are coming up on the end of times, and there is a point where God says, all right, this is the tribulation period. And so these are things I think we should be not necessarily looking for, but understanding that that's the time in which we live. And so when you talk about, CERN being located over the pit and a key in which, we have these evil forces truly attempting to open these portals to speak to these fallen angel characters, which we know in the book of Yasher, in the book of Enoch, even in the Bible, they all spoke about fallen angels who gave technological advancements to humans. And do you still see that going on with this facility? Is that the ultimate end game there?
Absolutely, and even more so. It's happening more and more. As more portals are open at a quantum level by the quantum computer, we are seeing more and more demonic influence happening within our dimension, within our realm, if you want to call it our analog environment. We are seeing an awful lot of digital information that's coming through from the other side by way of these quantum computers. But linking that over to CERN will open a much larger portal that I describe as a freeway that is going to allow a cascading of digital information and entities, spiritual entities, that will enter into our analog dimension. That is the function of the abyss. That is the opening of the abyss. And I agree with you. It is the timing of God. This is God's plan. He's allowing this, and CERN will be successful. CERN and the adiabatic quantum computer will ultimately be successful in breaking the code, the key that unlocks the bottomless pit. The key itself, the code is going to provide information as to how much power that the Large Hadron Collider must achieve and sustain in order to open a stable interdimensional portal. Now, this is on a macro scale compared to what the adiabatic quantum computer is doing at the quantum scale, but it is a very identical process in terms of who they're trying to allow to enter our dimension. Right now, people are seeing in popular culture the Mandela effect. Well, I call that the Mandela portals. What's happening is information, which I call quantum pollution. Quantum pollution is entering from other dimensions, and that number's in the thousands of dimensions, parallel dimensions, that D-Wave specifically openly talks about. Gordy Rose, their Chief Technology Officer, I have a link to his video on my Urgent Discoveries tab, talking about everything that you and I are talking about right now in terms of parallel dimensions, the numbers of them, and the fact that they are gathering resources, as he calls it. They're grabbing resources, is actually what he said, from parallel dimensions. And I'm going to stop there and let you jump in.
So I guess my first question is, what kind of resources are they attempting to grab from these other dimensions?
Well, in the preliminary stages, they were sending what are called combinatorial optimized equations. They were sending equations into other dimensions and asking for a solution to those equations, and they were successful in receiving 100% correct information from other dimensions. Now,
wow.
There's a lot of this that is explained on my website, but the point here is that it started with just basic computations. Now they're actually getting solutions to problems that are much more complex, and this moves into the realm of a psychological operation. There is a psyops going on, which is the Mandela effects, through what I call Mandela portals that are created by the opening of portals at the quantum level by this computer. So what is coming through in terms of resources now are targets as part of a psychological operation to teach the AI computer, the artificially intelligent computer, which is the Model 2048 D-Wave computer, is artificially intelligent. It runs behavioral modeling algorithms to determine how people will behave if you introduce something into their environment. What is being introduced from the other side, from parallel dimensions, are specific targeted items in popular culture, including the Bible, that they want to artificially manipulate and change so as to see and observe the behavior of people and then create algorithms, models of how people predictably will behave when you stimulate them. Now, that's a long explanation, but what I'm trying to say here is the Mandela effect is a psychological operation. The targets of those Mandela effects are derived from other dimensions. Those are the solutions. Those are the resources that are coming through. Now, I'm going to stop in a second here, but very quickly, I want to underscore that there are thousands of effects occurring that we do not see, that we are not aware of, in addition to those in popular culture, and I'll stop there.
So what is the simple definition for exactly what the Mandela effect is, for those who may not know?
It is the digital manipulation of our environment
and how
by
does
way
that,
of information derived from parallel dimensions.
How does that affect people?
Well, people have been responding to changes in Scripture, for example, and in popular culture, movies and books, and most of it has been negative. A lot of people have been panicked by these changes. Of course, there are a lot of people that debunk it and say it's nonsense, but this all factors into the teaching of the artificially intelligent computer about how people think, so that it can self-learn. It's a self-taught process of learning how to think like human beings, and then ultimately how to control them.
So is it more of like the Mandela effect? Would it be like computer controlled, demonic controlled? What is, I guess, the source of the gatherer, so to speak?
In your perspective and mine that we share, reaching out into these other parallel worlds is purely a demonic form of communication, that they're speaking to demonic entities. And therefore, the effects that we're experiencing here are teasers. They're playing a game. This is what is known as the Monte Carlo game in physics, but it also relates over to psychology. There's a Monte Carlo form of statistical analysis. To keep it simple, basically they're playing a game with us right now, but it's an evil-sourced game, ultimately to change our reality. They are manipulating our reality through digital augmentation. The Mandela effects are the tip of the iceberg of the changes that are being imparted digitally upon our environment. You see people now with Pokemon Go. We're looking at augmentation, digital augmentation of our reality. This is moving people in the direction of wanting to exist in a digitally augmented environment versus the analog one that we know so well. This is moving people into the realm of existing in a digitally created world rather than the natural world. And I'll stop.
So more like a matrix, so to speak. But before you answer that question, Anthony, we're going to take a quick break from our sponsor at getthetea.com. So hang on with us. We'll be right back.
Health in America is becoming a top priority. Or maybe I should say, good health in the world is becoming a top priority. Maintaining a healthy body can be challenging. How about letting Life Change Tea help you? Our tea you make, you drink, and you benefit. Our unique blend of 8 different herbs helps you maintain good digestion, a healthy colon, and detoxes harmful toxins and parasites out of your body. And you know what? It tastes great. If you're wanting a change, a life change when it comes to health, log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Or you can call us at 928-308-0408. That's 928-308-0408. When you log on to our mobile-friendly website, you can read all the numerous testimonies of how Life Change Tea has helped so many people. We carry many, many beneficial products that help your health and keep you on track. Getthetea.com. Kind of gets in your head, doesn't it? Getthetea.com.
And we are back from our break at www.getthetea.com. So, Anthony, I know we were, talking about the Mandela effect, the portal, the key to the bottomless pit, and some of the matrix. Now, before I get into that, I had a few of my viewers out there on YouTube send me a video, I guess, of a bunch of people dressed in these hoods attempting to do a sacrifice at CERN, and I was very skeptical about it, but I'm like, I'll ask Anthony and see if he looked into it. So do you know what I'm talking about here, that video?
Yeah, I do. I took a look at it, and it's a prank. This is a hit-and-run prank perpetrated by some kids. If you look at the person that's holding what appears to be a knife, perhaps a scalpel, that person is wearing tennis shoes or running shoes. Clearly, this is staged and hit and run in the sense that they got in there before they were noticed by security and got out. And that's actually a public area. That's a public courtyard that the statue of Shiva in the background is sitting in front of the administration building. This is no big deal getting into that area. So, yeah, it's a hoax. It's all staged just to get 1 million views on YouTube.
That's what I was thinking. And people do that. It's unfortunate, but at least, I agree with you there 100%. So about this sort of matrix, I guess, what is your, kind of leading from where we left off? Is that kind of what it is? But not, obviously not the real matrix like we're talking, on the movies, but it's kind of like that.
Yeah, I hope people will appreciate that what's going on in the greater popular culture is that through all of the television and movies and video games, that there's a deliberate programming of people that is moving forward as a large agenda of controlling how people think and how they behave. I mentioned the AI computer is learning how people behave and looking at predictive modeling of human behavior for the purpose of controlling them. And concurrent to that is this whole psychological operation of getting people to the point where they want to demand the latest and greatest technology that can augment their reality. And no longer will people be satisfied with just their daily routine disconnected from technology. They don't want people living in their what we would call normal lifestyles separated from technology, because to be separated from the machines, the powers that be lose control of people.
So it's more of it's not a matrix per se, but more of a deliberate programming via our televisions, via our media, via, our magazines, through, all these different aspects coming at us, correct? Is that kind of?
That's correct. We hear the phrase people are being dumbed down for a variety of ways, environmentally and electronically. I think to be more specific, we are losing our ability to think critically, our ability to think rationally. We're just passively observing and absorbing information and patterns of behavior. We're being manipulated. This is a game. And unless you see the game from a distance, from an objective point of view, from a perspective of critical analysis, looking at the technology, looking at how things are being done, and observing how people around you are responding to this input of digital reality augmentation, then you don't see the game. If you don't see the game, then you don't realize you're being manipulated. Part of my mission, and I think your mission as well, and other people like us, is to say, hey, look at the technology, look at what's being done with it, and understand that you are being manipulated within a game.
And I couldn't agree much more, and a lot of what I do on YouTube, on, the radio here is, there's a majority of the culture that is being dumbed down, and it's all, behind closed doors. I mean, like you said, they do it via the television. I was listening the other day, at a salon that I was at, and, just sitting there, and over the radio comes this bonehead guy, some rapper. I don't listen to that music, or so I don't know the names of these people. I mean, it's just so far from my head. But whoever it was, he was a famous guy, and he came on and said, "Oh, I ain't gonna vote for Donald Trump. I don't like Donald Trump because he eats his chicken with a fork." And anybody who eats their chicken with a fork, I just don't trust. And I thought, since when did our policies and the effect of our country become about eating chicken with a fork, for crying out loud? And I think that proved the dumbing down of the culture. I mean, it had nothing to do with the do other than what the guy looked like, how he ate. And
that's true.
It's disturbing and sickening. I wanted to can you turn that off? So mad. I was so mad. And I took everything to shut my mouth,
It is hard because you do see the game. You do see what's going on, and you do see the effects upon people. The sad thing is, people like you and I that are aware, we are seeing people who are completely absorbed and manipulated by this psychological operation that's going on in the greater scale. I don't mean just the Mandela effect. I mean the greater psychological operation that's being done to change the way people think, literally, physically, and psychologically changing how people think, so that they don't question, so that they become the sheeple that we talk about a lot, so that they just blindly follow. And where this is going is the blind following of the one world leader, the Antichrist, and the New World Order, the single form of government, the loss of sovereignty of governments and nations, and the loss of the sovereignty of the individual. That's where it's going, the loss of sovereignty. And therefore, they can control the masses. And you and I see it, and it's almost like, come on, people, why can't the rest of you see what's going on? Well, they're the victims, the unfortunate victims. And so, in your way of thinking and my way of thinking as Christians, we feel sorry for people that are being deceived.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm excited that there is, a way out, and that's Jesus Christ. Thankfully, you and I are bought and saved by the blood of our Lord. And, if anybody doesn't know the Lord, I encourage you to please make sure you get right with the Lord, because the times that we live in right now, I think we're living on borrowed time. What do you think?
We are definitely living on borrowed time, and time is very short. And I think what I'd like to impart, to echo what you're saying and reinforce it, is that the reason you and I are able to see the game is that we're not necessarily special people.
No.
We've just turned to Jesus Christ, and we've accepted the Holy Spirit. It's the power of the Holy Spirit that opens our eyes, opens our ears, opens our minds, reveals the game to us, and says, okay, I've shown it to you. You see what's really going on. You see that the source of all of this is evil. Now go out and spread that information to other people so that they can begin to question on their own, do their own research, hopefully think critically about what's going on around them, and come to the similar conclusion that they're being played, and turn to Jesus Christ, because any other direction is pure evil.
Absolutely. And the other thing is there's no reason to fear. Like you and I study this kind of stuff all day long, but we're not fearful about it. We're not scared of what's coming upon the earth. We're just ready. We understand it. We know what's going on, but we know there's a happy ending at the end of it all. We know Jesus Christ prevails. We know he brings his kingdom back, and one day we'll all be united. Well, the Christians will be united with God in heaven. So for Christians out there, don't let this stuff fear you. It's not something to be feared, but it isn't something to ignore either. It's something that we need to pay attention to. Do you agree, Anthony?
Totally agree. And no, there's no fear in this. It makes me sad for other people, as I said, who can't see this. But that's what drives people like you and me, is to say, here's the information right in front of you. Here's a machine, the largest, most complex, most expensive machine in recorded human history. That's evidence. That's evidence of what we're talking about that you need to pay attention to. You need to look at things like the quantum computers, or ask more specific questions about why are things being changed in the popular culture, like the Mandela effect. Whether people want to say it's real or not, it is out there psychologically. That's the only thing that's important about the Mandela effect, is it is being talked about. It's being communicated. Whether it's real or not, whether it's factual or not, is irrelevant. It is a psychological operation in that it is a topic to be talked about. So these are just things that we can utilize to say to people, look, the world is being changed by these machines and processes. You're not looking at them, and therefore they are able to do things behind the scenes that are directly impacting you on a daily basis. What's in it for you? It's your salvation. That's what it comes down to. So ask the question, do you want to be, subject to a dictator and a one-world government, or would you rather have your own personal individual sovereignty and the sovereignty of the nation that you value so much, that's given you so much? You have a choice, and the best way to deal with that, as you said, is to turn to Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. Now, kind of going back, so in a nutshell, what we've kind of talked about so far is we have CERN, the facility located over the bottomless pit. We have a key that can, per se, open it, a coded message using cryptography, kind of, that uses an encryption via a network, via a D-Wave quantum computer, kind of linked with the CERN facility that they communicate via computer networking. And then we have so I guess, is there periodic openings of these portals? They have accessed it a little bit to a point. Is there that going on? Because is the Mandela effect and the Mandela portal a result of some of those openings?
Absolutely, this is a result of it. In fact, this is a continuous process. These computers individually cost over $10 million apiece. Therefore, they have to be run continuously. Therefore, portals are being opened, thousands of portals. I'm going to give you a number. The latest model computer from D-Wave, which they have not announced publicly, the number is 4,096 qubits. That's 4,096 qubits.
Now, can I ask where you got the information, if it's not out publicly on their site yet? Can I?
Sure. It's simple mathematical progression. Gordy Rose and some of the other technology representatives from D-Wave have made a number of public presentations in which they describe the progression of their model numbers. Their model numbers, initially, the number of qubits were doubling every 12 months, what they called Rose's number, because of Gordy Rose, their CTO. Roughly every 12 months, they would double the number of qubits in their models of computers. Now they've actually accelerated that to every quarter. So every 3 months, they're doubling the number of qubits. All I've done is a mathematical projection, a multiplication, from their last known publicly announced number, which was the model 1024. And that was in February of last year. So in fact, they may be even further advanced in their number of qubits beyond 4096. But I can say with a high degree of certainty that they have at least the 4096. model in existence right now.
Okay, so you were talking about the amount of portals. So finish that one. I kind of interrupted you.
No, that's okay. As Gordy Rose cited in the video on my website, he said the model 512, which is 512 qubits, the number of parallel dimensions that that machine is accessing is 2 to the 500th power. So he relates the number of qubits, roughly 500. Multiply that times 2, but it's a power. It's a power of magnitude. Magnitude is 3 zeros. So if you take 500 of those groupings of 3 zeros, which 3 zeros is a magnitude, it's the power when you're doing exponential multiplication, 10 to the 5th power, 10 to the 12th power. We're talking 10 to the 500th power. Now we're talking about 10 to the 4,000th power. That's the number of parallel dimensions. That's 4,096 of those triple zeros arranged in one number extending out. You can't even wrap your mind around that. Let's just call it infinite at this point. An infinite number of parallel dimensions that they openly pronounce in their public lectures that they are accessing. I'm not making this up. I'm simply quoting these guys.
Now, are these in their lectures and stuff? Do they share them online, or is it just at the facility they're kind of doing this behind closed doors?
Well, these are taken from online sources. They're on YouTube, but these are from scientific events, from conferences that are being recorded. In the conferences, the organizers are posting them to YouTube. So these aren't just, YouTubers that are out there making stuff up. This is recordings of their actual lectures, and that's what I have linked on my website.
Awesome, which I encourage everyone to go to his website, anthonypatch.com, and check that out because, like I said, you even have a YouTube channel. Is that under your name as well, Anthony?
Yeah, it's under Anthony Patch. I don't post very often there, but there are videos on there. There are probably over 300 hours of interviews from people like yourself and many other bloggers that have interviewed me for well over 3 years now on all of these topics. But I'd like to cite a couple of quotes from Gordy Rose's most recent presentation.
Sure.
Can I do that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and these are on my website. In the video, he talks about pulse tube dilation refrigerators. Now, the reason I bring that up is because this machine operates at a temperature that's hundreds of times colder than outer space. But he describes these refrigerators that when you stand next to the computer that's in an enclosure, it sounds eerily like a heartbeat. He follows that in just a few minutes later by saying that when you stand next to this computer and you're listening to this heartbeat, and I'll quote, "It feels like an altar to an alien god."
Oh.
Now, who in the world of pure science and research talks about alien gods? That kind of jumps off the page.
Yeah. That's
kind of outrageous.
Now, let me actually tell you something. It kind of goes along with his quote, like 100%. I did a report, I don't know, a month or so ago, and I brought it up on my YouTube channel a few times, but I don't think I've ever brought it up with you. There was a report that I read on, blackvault.com. It has a lot of information, but it's called One Human Problem. If anybody wants to look it up, One Human Problem, which designates what? Humans as a problem. The solution to that, and its relation to the UFO phenomenon document. Now, in this particular document, I think it goes well with your quote, altar to an alien god, and it goes well with CERN. And Anthony, if you get a chance, I recommend you read this thing. But it was by Thomas E. Bearden, Bearden, which a few people have told me he is linked to Tesla, Nikolai Tesla. But nonetheless, in this report, and I'm going to try to make it short, he says there's a problem of humanity. Basically, what is the problem of humans? he labels it, they're sinful, basically. We murder, we lie, we cheat, and that's because we're born into sin. Now, this man is not a Christian. Let me make that clear. But he says that's the problem with humans, is they're all bad, basically. And I agree. We're born into sin. We don't come out washed by the blood of Christ. Now, he says, however, everybody's been looking to a solution for this problem, the problem of humanity. And so he offers an actual solution. And now keep in mind, this was back in 1977, where he's tangoing this idea with Tesla technology, around him, so to speak. But nonetheless, the report doesn't get into how to do it. There are other reports that actually do, however, but it tells them what they're looking to do. And basically what he says is, here's what we need to do to fix the problem is we need to link brains. So you, me, everybody on the planet links a brain. Now, he doesn't say how we're going to link brains, but I would assume through some kind of either nanotech or microchip technology or however they get that done. And then he says, and what happens is you think everybody else is you. So, and I'm just quoting the source here. And so, in other words, you won't lie to yourself, you won't cheat, you won't hurt yourself, you won't murder. So then we would have this peace on earth. And then he ponders the question, well, where are we going to get the quote brain, perfect brain, that we all spawn from? And I'm thinking Antichrist, So he talks about this super brain that could be a sort of UFO being, which attribute demonic or, whatever. And so we can get this being from otherworldly being is the main source of the link of who we all are like-minded and tied with. Freaky stuff. What do you think about that?
Well, it fits right into another quote by Gordy Rose from D-Wave, and he said that when they announced their Model 1024 computer last February, they equated it to having the equivalent processing power of 7 billion human brains. Now, if you want to translate that into the context of what you just described, they're talking about linking 7 billion human brains into one computer. That's the adiabatic quantum computer.
Oh, and this was written in 77.
You can't wrap your head around a computer having the capabilities of that many brains, given that each individual brain has the capacity to process over 1 petaflop of data information every moment.
Oh, gosh. You got to read that, Anthony. You would be like, it's crazy, but written in 1977, and here we are, 2016, and they're doing just that.
They are doing just that, and the computer continues to advance more rapidly now on a quarterly basis. It's becoming more and more powerful. Underscore the fact that it is artificially intelligent and that it is learning, self-learning, self-teaching on a regular basis while it's extracting resources, information, guidance, technology from other worlds, from parallel dimensions. This is the same type of stuff that we relate to when we're talking about the Nazis and their high-tech advancements, that they were delving into the occult and getting information from the other side, from other dimensions. Same thing is going on, but on a much grander scale right now. And therefore, what they said in 77, in the 70s, is being played out right now. And I'd love it if you'd post a link to that on your video when you put it up, or send it to me by email. I'd love to research that.
Oh yeah, I will definitely link it. Now, real quick, we're going to take a quick break from our sponsor at www.getthet.com, and Anthony and I will be right back.
Health in America is becoming a top priority. Or maybe I should say, good health in the world is becoming a top priority. Maintaining a healthy body can be challenging. How about letting Life Change Tea help you? Our tea you make, you drink, and you benefit. Our unique blend of 8 different herbs helps you maintain good digestion, a healthy colon, and detoxes harmful toxins and parasites out of your body. And you know what? It tastes great. If you're wanting a change, a life change when it comes to health, log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Or you can call us at 928-308-0408. That's 928-308-0408. When you log on to our mobile-friendly website, you can read all the numerous testimonies of how Life Change Tea has helped so many people. We carry many, many beneficial products that help your health and keep you on track. Getthetea.com. Kind of gets in your head, doesn't it? Getthetea.com.
And we are back to When Conspiracy Becomes Reality radio broadcast. And Anthony Patch and I were discussing brain linkage and many different things about history's past. Now, while the commercial break was on, Anthony, you were telling me how important history is, and because that shows the things that they were thinking out in the past and how they're playing out today. And I think that's such a crucial point.
It really is. Part of how I come up with the items that I link together, that I connect the dots, is to look at what they were talking about back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when they were not quite so concerned about the information getting out across the world. Because remember, information was restricted to things like the Encyclopedia Britannica and snail mail and telephones. They didn't have the internet, so they weren't worried about their goals and aspirations and their projections for the future really leaking out into the popular consciousness as it is today. So what you and I have been doing is looking back at these older documents, these older publications and statements, and we're able to say, that's the motivation. Those are the goals that they were setting forth for the future. Well, the future is today, and they've built the machines to achieve the goals that they were talking about in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Wow. And okay, so which I think plays into everything we're seeing today, because a lot of the times the documents don't even get leaked out until about 30, 40 to 50 years after they've actually happened, which is why I'm coming across stuff in 1977 and 2016, because they only let us have so much information through the Freedom of Information Act. A lot of it is still kept classified, unfortunately. Now, on a personal level, and do you think that some of the technological advances that we see today, and that have been talked about in history's past, do you think a lot of that came from, say, opening up these portals or whatnot, or getting that information from the fallen angels that in biblical times were sharing technology with the humans back in the day?
Yeah, I think that from back in the day, so to speak, back when prior to the flood, prior to the destruction of the Tower of Babel, definitely information that was supposed to be forbidden was given to humans, was given to us. That process has never really stopped. There have been specific individuals who have leveraged it. Let's talk about Jack Parsons from Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL. We can talk about NASA. We can talk about Operation Paperclip from, the importing of Nazi scientists from, Germany post-World War II. All of these notable instances of people who have gathered information from the employment of occult practices, in other words, the communication to the other realms, and accessing information that really is forbidden, that process is never stopped. And it's carried through by the secret societies all through history. And so what we're seeing now is the manifestation of what typically has been hidden, and they didn't have the ability economically to build the machines that we see today. But definitely it is an ongoing process of communication and deriving more and more advancements in technology, to the point where, as I said before we came on the air today, you and I, who are researchers, we are just being inundated like a fire hose of information coming at us that we can't even process all of it. But that's an indication of the flood of the quantity of information that's coming from the other side and being employed within all of the major disciplines of science today.
Absolutely. Now, I know things, given time, and do you see things getting worse with CERN? More portal openings? I mean, where do you see it going in the very near future?
Well, specifically with CERN, we now have a merging of two machines. We have the ring-based Large Hadron Collider particle accelerator with a new linear or straight line particle accelerator that when the two machines are fully operational at CERN, they will generate over 1,000 times the power that they're operating at now. In fact, it's in the quadrillions. It's beyond the 1,000 range. They are going to hit 20 peta-electron volts. Now, last year in October, I made an announcement that they would move from 13 tera-electron volts, which is trillions, to 1 peta-electron volt, specifically 1.15, which is a jump. It's into from trillions to quadrillions. That was one. What they're going to achieve with the combination of these two accelerators at CERN is 20 quadrillions of electron volts. You can't even wrap your head around how much power that is and the implications, but that's the power level that is required to open the large scale and what will be a stable interdimensional portal. So they will be successful. As I said earlier, God will allow this. This is the fulfillment of the opening of the abyss in Revelation. And no, it's not going to be good for those that are still here, because it will unleash the locust army of demons, demonic entities, physical entities upon this planet. So no, this is not something you want to play around with or think that it's just science fiction. This is science fact. Unfortunately, the people that are doing this research have been deceived. They believe that they are going to achieve immortality, and that's a whole nother discussion. But if you look at all of what's going on in the Silicon Valley in California in terms of venture capital and where the money is all being pumped into, it is into immortality research. They are trying to defeat death. That's the original lie that Satan gave to Adam and Eve, that ye shall be as gods.
I did a report yesterday on YouTube here on a website. It's called 2045.com. And it kind of dropped my jaw to the floor, so to speak. And what they did is they're basically an organization which promotes immortality. I mean, that's the end game. So they're playing God, obviously, and drawing a very thin line that I don't think should personally be drawn. But they already have the technology in the place. But what they actually are detailing doing is a real life transcendence, like the movie with Johnny Depp where they transport his personality into this AI computer. However, this particular organization actually sells these avatars, these human avatars, for $3 million, and I'm not kidding. They're selling them. Public's buying them, as far as I'm aware. In which later, I guess, upon death, eventually the goal is, and they're saying they'll have it all ready by 2045, and parts of it ready even before then, and where they want to transfer the human brain into this avatar, and then eventually they want to transfer the human consciousness into these avatars. And it was really disturbing. But what's your take on that kind of technology?
Well, understand that the technology that we're being shown today is already 30, 40, and 50 years in advance. We're only being shown the tip of the iceberg of what they want us to see. So to say 2045 is actually misleading. That technology already exists. The employment of it is being hidden from us, that obfuscation of science, as I like to call it. So this is the same thing as prior to the flood. This is the same thing that God was seeing going on in terms of the fallen angels mating with human women, and the hybrids and the Nephilim and all of that. And he put a stop to that. Well, he'll put a stop to this. The way the world is going right now, we're not going to see 2045. Plain and simple. The advent, the nearness of the success of opening this interdimensional portal at CERN, which will open the abyss, is right upon us. I'm not one to put a specific timeline to things, but certainly we're not going to be here in 2045 as we exist today. So they're not going to be successful in this uploading of people into, computers, into avatars. God's going to put a stop to it.
Gotcha. And it is interesting when you kind of see the big picture and you're tying it all together. There's so many different aspects to it. And I think they do that on purpose. One, to kind of confuse us. Some of it, that's exactly what it's for. And the other, they kind of want to do behind the closed doors where none of us can see. Now, I know that it's just like increased amount of activities are happening at CERN. Is there anything that's more worrisome than the other? I know that the key thing was very huge, but anything that we should pay attention to specifically there?
Well, right now they're calibrating the awake plasma accelerator. It's a plasma wake field accelerator. And as I said, they're going to combine those two machines. By the end of this year, most of the calibration will be done, and early next year, they will be steadily ramping up the power. Now, we've seen the same thing occur when they ramped up the power with the ring-based accelerator, the LHC, and we've seen changes in the magnetosphere around the planet because of the superconducting magnets affecting our magnetosphere. We've also seen an increase in, volcanic activity and earthquakes. I do think that when they actually throw the switch with these two accelerators being combined, we are going to see greater earthquakes, and we will see a parting, possibly a permanent parting, but at least a very obvious parting of the magnetosphere. And it will be visible with the naked eye. It'll be very much like the parting of the rolling back of the scroll that we see in Scripture as that's rolling back of the heavens as a scroll. That type of effect is what we're going to see. We're going to see heavenly effects, if you will, in the visible sky, and we're also going to see terraforming effects on the planet as this power is ramped up with the two machines being combined.
Is there any of that going on already? Is any of this, I guess, kind of maybe on or off topic, is any of that linked to some of the sounds people are hearing in the sky currently? Because those sounds that you can play that sound like trumpets or whatnot that people have heard. Some are hoaxes, some are not, but is any of that linked to CERN?
Yeah, definitely linked to CERN. Last year, I talked about this quite a bit. These are telluric currents. That's Telluric, telluric currents. Now, these are naturally occurring currents that happen unnoticed. They're basically low voltage transmissions from the Earth itself. The Earth is a battery, a low voltage battery. These are electric discharges from the planet up into the atmosphere that then reflect back down onto the planet. Where that's coming from now is from the superconducting magnets that are 100,000 times stronger in their production of magnetic lines of force than the Earth itself. So the superconducting magnets are putting out magnetic lines of force out into the atmosphere, into the magnetosphere, that are then reflected, and they're reflected more specifically from the ionosphere back to the Earth. So the telluric currents produced by the Large Hadron Collider reflect off the ionosphere and back to Earth. When they reflect back to Earth, that's when the sounds are produced.
Wow, that's interesting. And I think, it's obviously worth the merit. Now, how long has the CERN facility, been open? Or running, running?
Yeah, in its present configuration since about 2008. They broke ground for CERN back in 1954, but the machine as it exists as a large ring began operation in 2008.
Which would make sense because that is when a lot of the noises, we started hearing upticks in those. So I think that makes sense 100%.
Alrighty.
Now, are there any other things that, I guess noticeable signs that have been in our skies or anything like that that maybe could be CERN caused? Anything other than that at this time?
Well, I know a lot of people send me videos, as they do to you, of things that are being seen in the clouds and in the sky that people are saying look like the opening of portals in the clouds. And most all of this are Photoshop things that are just being manufactured, or things that are naturally occurring that people just don't understand. We really cannot assign any of that to CERN right now. Really, the effects that CERN is having is more in terms of the earthquakes and then the changes in the magnetosphere. Those are the only things that really manifest. Now, if you want to talk about the demonic and people seeing demons and things coming through portals, that may be happening to a limited degree, but really that's nothing new. That's nothing specific to CERN itself. CERN really has more effect upon the planet itself than it does in terms of opening any portals. Any portals that are being opened are either done through rituals, and we do see rituals taking place in and around CERN, just like the tunnel opening. That was a complete ritual that was, praising Satan and praising the opening of the portal that's soon to come. But what we're seeing at CERN really has more earthly effects than it does anything else. Spirals in the sky or portals of cloud formations, none of that stuff is real. I just assign it to the category of nonsense.
Agreed. Well, we have about 3 minutes left. Can you share your website and any last thoughts for our viewers out there that you think are important for them to know?
Well, just to recap, that, the Mandela effect is a game. It's a psychological operation. And I would encourage people to, really just discount any of this stuff that's happening. They're trying to change history on us. They're trying to rewrite the books, whether it's the Bible or popular culture or other things. They're trying to rewrite it. It's no reason to be fearful or, to panic about it, because really all they're trying to do is test how we react to those things. So we're playing into that, you and I, by talking about it, but we're not reacting. We're not panicking, and we're not, fearful over it. I would like people to go to my website and take a look at the detailed information that I've provided on these topics, because we've only really scratched the surface, and it's hard in an hour to do justice, to all of these topics. So if they'll look at it and then go do their own research, put on their own thinking caps, try to be in that mindset of critical analysis. Look at things yourself, question things yourself. Don't take my word for it. Go look it up for yourself and find out if I'm on the right track or if I'm, full of hot air. But I think you'll find that there is a lot to be discovered if you dig just a little bit into the topics I provide on my website. And that's anthonypatch.com. And if you'd like to read my books, that would be fantastic. They're a lot of fun. They're very fast-paced, and they present a host of topics that most people have never heard about before. So I'll end it right there.
Awesome. And Revising Reality is your latest book. It's going to come out at the end of this month. And you also have 2 other books on your site there. What were the names on those?
Yeah, my first book is Covert Catastrophe, and that's part of a trilogy. The second book in the trilogy is 2048 Diamonds in the Rough. And I really get into quantum computers and nanotechnology very extensively in 2048. The third book is not part of the trilogy. We're stepping out of the world of fiction into nonfiction and pure research, and it's a collaboration with 3 other authors, good friends of mine, Josh Peck from the Sharpening's website. We have Gon Shimura from Face Like the Sun, and then my good friend who's a professor, Douglas Woodward. So the 4 of us are collaborating, submitting information, separate chapters, and Douglas is editing, and he's almost done with that. We should have some very high-profile people that will be involved in reviewing this book and putting out their own comments about it coming up in the next week or so.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Anthony, for coming on the broadcast. And this is Lisa Haven at When Conspiracy Becomes Reality, brought to you by www.leadingedgeradionetwork.com.